back into your space again. I think it was about my fourth artist conversation. It is a pleasure, of course, to continue to watch your growth. I think we're now at 250 years in Pan years for you.
Oh, for me.
Yeah, in terms of the body of work that you put out. But also, I like the fact that you have clearly demonstrated your versatility and that you've moved to embrace others into the performing arts. And you're arranging and writing. I don't think many people know about your writing skills. So perhaps we'll start there. You write, not arrange, you write what?
Well, everything under the sun. So, like more recently, I would have just completed 6 movements of a work I entitled Shades of My Caribbean, which was commissioned by the San Jacinto College in Texas. So on May the 3rd, we do a world premiere. I don't know what the equivalent time, I think it's like 8 p.m. in there at daytime. And that will feature styles of music that would have inspired me over time. So it's designed so it's for large steel orchestra with a soloist.
When you say large steel orchestra, we're looking at what type of numbers?
So in excess of, in this case, in excess of 25, we can range up to 50, versus what we would refer to as a chamber ensemble, which would have been like 7, 8 musicians. So because of how it's written for all of those parts. So with that movement, with that piece, so the first movement is entitled The River, which takes you through like the Caribbean waters. When you think about the rivers in places like Jamaica and Dominica, those are some of the places I've been to. Even in Trinidad, 5 Rivers, I think is the name of it. But going through spaces like that, smooth flowing Caribbean waters. I think in the description, second movement, the message, which is done in a calypso style. So the first one is in a reggae style, this one is in a calypso style. And it goes through, our people and our story that we have to tell. I mean, calypso is one of those things in the 1930s. So the message is really what will, through that song, I'm trying to depict, what happens, what it's like to tell that story about us being Caribbean. And I mean, we live in a space that is not just people of African descent, but we have people of European descent, different places. We have the Asians who came and settled here. So there are quite a number of people that settled here, and that is what makes that Caribbean identity so unique. The third movement is Wa'amoni, which is the traditional name for Barbuda, right? So that movement is actually a tribute to Barbuda, especially considering what they would have gone through with the Hurricane Irma, and then later I think it's Maria that came and also affected them, but also how long it would have taken to them to return to a level of normalcy. I mean, I was able to visit Barbuda last year and just having a lot of conversations with them. Yes, it was about culture, but really trying to understand what it was like being in an experience like that, not knowing.
Change their way of life.
Right. So in that movement, it was trying to depict, kind of what it felt like, the moods, and then coming out of that at the tail end, sort of victorious, I guess, if you want to say that. But when we talk about writing, one of the things, again, in terms of trying to use my influences on the music that I write, especially for people. We look at the devil rhythm, as we'd call it, what the drum pattern would be. That is actually a feature in that piece of music. But when you hear it, because it's a slow movement, right? It's really passionate, so it's a little slower, it's a little more soothing. Many people don't think about that rhythm that the drum set plays in carnival as a more subtle. So, I mean, when you do listen to it, it's like you would hear it. It's very, very obvious, but it's different at the same time. The fourth movement is one people.
Ah.
All right, it's one people, and again, we're talking about that collective, and that one is done in a kind of spiritual Baptist kind of rhythm that underneath that. I think that's what connects a lot of us here in the Caribbean, especially depending on where we came from. A lot of people are very religious, you know, but a spiritual Baptist type of thing coming back from West Africa, that kind of thing. Don't need to get into that. But the fifth movement I know for sure is Caribbean Dance Party. The sixth movement is Melting Pot, which, you know, has to, well, Caribbean Dance Party explains itself, you know, it's a part of who we are.
Yes.
The sixth movement, the Melting Pot, which speaks about all of us here, all the people that exist within our space, but also looking back through COVID, looking back at how we interact with one another. Sometimes there's this fight for identity that is not necessary, and it's really, I mean,
that shouldn't be necessary.
It shouldn't be,
but
right?
it's a part of what we do.
I hear that.
Constant
part. Melting Pot. What's very interesting about it, because it has two names. It's Melting Pot, and then there's the other one. There's a better way. So that's your message piece. That's your message piece. That's my message piece. So, you know, in all of this, I mean, I remember speaking to people about, I mean, we love our Trinidadian brothers and sisters, but a lot of things we love about them isn't just of African descent. I mean, we love the parang, but the parang is Spanish influence. Yes. We love our roti, but that's Indian influence, right? So they were able to sort of embrace the people that the multiculturalism that exists in their space. And more so, you know, this piece, it has a lot to do with my influence here in Antigua and Barbuda, the things that would have influenced me here in Antigua and Barbuda, and how I think we need to start to embrace what Antigua and Barbuda currently is. You know, the influence of the Chinese, influence of the Spanish, the people from the DR, and many other places, as well as what is the African traditions and cultures, and see how best we can sort of create this new amalgamation of people. So in terms of writing, I love to do that type of writing. I mean, I would have done one entitled Home when back in 2015. Well, I finished it in 2015, and that's a 4-movement work for steel pan and steel pan soloists. And that has a whole different writing. Outside of that, writing for calypso, writing for pop, just general pop music. The list goes on. And some of it, it's easier in terms of writing, you know, because I do producing as well in my little home studio, and I would send to, so like those songs, what I did with Talia and with Seta.
Bombs at the top, and I make a ready to start the fight. When I see them coming down, I'm not ready to show down. Better watch your back, here they come. It's still pan war, the band showdown, musical bombs on the night of Panorama. It's still pan war, hear the bands play. Oh yeah, yo, it's bacchanal for the carnival. It's war for Panorama. See when them are coming.
And those songs that I would have produced and then sent to like Jagger, for example, and they would have done the mixing, mastering, and a little bit of editing and things like that. Because I like that kind of thing. Those are a little easier. Those aren't as hard as writing, you know, these larger works that I hope to, the first one, Home, that I did, is I hope to eventually have it done for orchestra, redone for a full string and brass orchestra, that I can share that with people. Work for solo instruments is huge as well. So writing solo steel pan work that is in graded examinations book in Trinidad. People use it in the US. I've even sent some stuff to the UK to some panists there.
So your work is being featured internationally?
Yes, and actually more so internationally than locally.
But because I was just going to get to that, because as we have this conversation, we don't see your work that much here unless it's connected to Hell's Gate
or competition,
or in a competition space. So what is it that we're not doing in Antigua, you think, that causes us to be so limiting?
I think limiting is definitely the word, and I think it has a lot to do with people's understanding of what the industry is. I use the term very often, one-dimensional. We have this very one-dimensional approach to things. So The only time we would speak about certain types of music is at Carnival, which limits why is it that I can't get up on a Tuesday morning in February and listen to some sort of uplifting soca, something that just speaks about, just, having a good day and being a good person. And I mean, why does it have to be wine on a woman, rum drinking, and that's something that I've been appealing to even creators. I'm really happy to hear there are two songs that stand out to me this year: the Not You and the No Weapon, right? Which is a little different to what we're accustomed to.
By artists who would normally do the traditional. Right. So they were breaking out as well.
Right. But what it does now, I mean, I can listen to that sound in December. And if I'm going through a bad time or feel like people are hating, for lack of a better term. Well, there are people that just don't see things the way that you see, and they're finding, inappropriate ways of addressing it with you. I mean, you can get up and start kind of hype yourself, I'm not going to deal with that today. I'm going to have a good day, or, we're not going to deal with that, those negative energies. We don't want to deal with them. All right. So, it does that kind of thing. And one of the things that I've spoken to people here, when I look at music and art just generally across the creative landscape, not just in Antigua and Barbuda, is like when I look at these different places, they somehow find a way to create topics that transcends time. I mean, our Calypsonians did a very good job at that. I remember at Short Shot's 80th, I would have done for him, what do you call it? The Lamentation.
Yes.
No. At the same time, it was a whole thing with the Ukraine war, So, because of how it was written, I mean, if you retake it out of the Calypso realm and just look at the lyrics and put it onto something else, it would really. And I'm pretty sure we're going to be talking about the same topic for the next 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years. So those are the kind of things, choosing proper topics and then writing to that extent. Right, that is what makes music live much longer, right? So a lot of the songs that I would have written 10 years ago are still being performed by steel bands now, right? And 10 years is really, when I was much younger, but they're still being performed because they're not confined to a particular setting. It's not. So
dear listeners, he's talking about 10 years that we're accustomed to. For him, it's probably about 30 years in, pan arranging kind of style, but yeah.
So, so in terms of the writing, it really, I always see myself as this, what I refer to as a programmatic composer, which means you write music to depict a theme or a setting. I've always seen myself writing for theatre, writing for movie. I mean, we actually may have a big project coming up later this year. Yes. But I always see myself writing, which is why even in my panorama arrangement, you would see this very clear depiction of whatever the theme is. If we're doing fire, I'll try to see how best I can create that atmosphere
within the music.
Yes. And when we did Jumbi, and a lot of people love Jumbi, just to be able to create that atmosphere because I think it's easier to grab people's attention. I mean, and it's easier for people to get an appreciation for it because they now can see the scenes by listening to the music, right? So kind of like hearing with your eyes in a weird way, or seeing with your ears. Yes, seeing with your ears.
Right. Like that. Yeah, that's it. Seeing with your ears.
So yeah, I've always seen myself, and that's something that actually came through CXC. And one of the requirements of CXC really got me very interested in that. It's called Modest Mussorgsky Ravel's Pictures at an Exhibition. We did it with Marion Byron back then, and since then it's been a huge part of what I do, the writing. So that is the whole writing aspect of it. I'm not very good at the lyrics.
You're not?
I mean, I can. I've done it, but it's not my strongest. If you ask me, I'd always prefer somebody else doing it.
Well, so you prefer to take the lyrics and match the music?
Either which way is fine. Once I don't have to write the lyrics.
Okay.
I prefer. But I do it, but it's not my strongest forte.
Fair enough. That's it. I want to move onwards, or maybe move around a bit, because we know your foundation is Pan, and with which you've layered beautiful musical skills and all of what you do. But I note too that you are making a deliberate effort to ensure that you use your strengths to provide a platform to bring others along. Which brings me to Showcase. Why Showcase? Or what is Showcase for those who may not be familiar?
Well, Showcase is a platform that was created back in 2018. Or I should say it was conceptualized in 2017. It was originally done in 2018. We did 2020, right? Good. And the idea with Showcase was to create a platform where the performers, or what we refer to as contributors, are not limited by people's expectations. So usually, you go to an event, you expect to hear a particular type of music,
right,
or expect to see a particular type of performance. That's not Showcase. If you notice at Showcase, you will never ever get a program.
True.
3 years Showcase has been running, and I've never printed a program for the public, and that is because you're not supposed to expect anything. You come in and whatever you're given, you take. So what that does, you see, a lot of times when we go in with expectations, if they don't meet our expectations, we think that it's, okay, it's bad, it's not what I expected. But it's not that something was wrong with it, you just expected something different. But if you come not really expecting it, maybe the only expectation you should have is that it's going to be good.
No. The expectation we have is it's going to be great and what it can cook up this year.
Well,
and these
fine.
Contributors, of course.
Fine. So that is a good expectation to have. But outside of that, you would know what Annie the Voice would have come up with this year. Now a lot of people don't even know the songs that she performed because they weren't the traditional songs that we'd hear on. I'm not necessarily talking about Calypso, but they weren't the Adele,
right,
which is very popular, or the Beyonces. But a lot of people, everybody just was amazed by her performance. So we create a space like that so that people can now see our creatives in the way that they want. And that's how when we speak to the creatives or the contributors, that's what we explain to them. We want you to design your performance the way you want people to see and appreciate you. And we don't have many of those many of those spaces. So that platform was created just for that. And even, there are a few people who come and be like, they expect, like one guy said this year, he would have appreciated a bit more Calypso, maybe a short shirt, or they call it a sparrow, right? I get you.
But was that the forum for that? I'm curious.
I get you. I mean, I have to hear the
right,
feedback. That's not necessarily the design. I'm not saying that you wouldn't come next year and get it.
Right.
But, I mean, if it is that this is what the contributors feel like they need to bring to you, that night you would have featured majority of the music that was performed were original pieces.
That is true.
Right. So that is what we would have contributed to, not just Antigua and Barbados, but to the music sphere all over.
What's your vision for Showcase?
To eventually build it out into a festival, both educational and then continue with the entertainment side as well.
Locally only?
Not just locally.
Because my vision is not my product. I'm fast. But my vision is that I see you exporting a component of Showcase
so
that we can take.
If you check the on the flyer, so there's a sponsor on the flyer that nobody's ever asked what this is. So one of the sponsors on the flyer is, or one of the artwork you would see on the flyer as a sponsor, I should say, is Dadley Project. Now, Dadley Project is a group that we created a couple of years ago. I don't remember the exact year. And really what it is, so it's a group of entertainers. Yes, I'm a part of that group. But when we market it, it's kind of called as featuring Dadley Project.
Right.
It could be 3 musicians, a bass drummer and keyboardist. It could be 20 musicians. It could be 50 musicians. And what we started doing over the last year and a half is, so people reach out to me and be like, Karen, I like Anya. Could we get a 2-part performance? We'd have that conversation with them. And then we speak to Anya. So it's a kind of grooming platform as well. Anya, these are what we expect. You need to do this. You need to make sure you do this. Make sure you dress. And I'm using Anya because Anya is one of the, the person that we as a young person is now, doing a lot of stuff on her own. There are many others as well. Jafar Barkley as well is one that we send out. to a lesser extent to Marisha. We sent them a lot, so it would be, you know, Anya of Daddy Project kind of thing. So you mentioned about getting people, taking the product overseas.
Beyond the show, yes.
My big vision is for us to start seeing a lot more of our Antiguan musicians who are not necessarily the soca artists, right? And those, you know, those who travel, but the other musicians and entertainers starts being featured on the regional festivals, the St. Kitts Music Festival, the St. Lucia Jazz Festival, Tobago Jazz Festival, Dominica Creole Festival, right? Because there are musicians from across the Caribbean who do perform there, who aren't the mainstream pop artists.
Right.
Caribbean pop is soca. They actually do get to perform there. Why can't we see Antiguans performing there? And then, you know, going into some of the biggest theaters in the US as well. We want to start seeing people there, but we have to continue to not just create content, but create quality product, you know, that it can market all over the world.
How do we convince our people, I say our because you and I are from the same space, that their role as consumers of what is created is critical? I know it's a hard question.
There is an easy way.
Really?
There's a very easy way.
Which is?
If we always have competition from like regional territories, especially. Let me explain. I want to make sure that I'm clear. And I'll give you the backstory why I say that. What I notice is, you see, if somebody from another territory comes and, you know, they would wear their national dress, we feel inclined
to defend.
Right.
Okay.
That is when, and I often use the term selective patriotism. I use that. But the thing is, the reality is, you know, I see it at school as well. You know, when people are going back to school, they'll call back and they say, you know, director, you know, is there stuff that we can get that can, you know, sort of depict Antiguan Barbuda culture, you know, items, because Jamaica is there, and Trinidad is there, and they say we have to look good. The thing is, and it's sad, but that's the reality at the same time. So that's in terms of the easy way, we can do it that way, you know, when we have these things very regularly. But I think, like Showcase, and many other events, I can call them, it is for, we talk about support, right? But I think people feel the support is just always paying $1 to come in the door. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily. Sharing the content along your timeline, social media, recommending is another way. I remember I sent out an invitation to somebody for Showcase, and they messaged me and said that they're sorry that they can't be there to support by financially. I was a little confused because I sent you an invitation. I don't know why you're asking about supporting financially, but for me it's more of how do we get this information out to as many people as possible, yes. Which is why it's very important that young people are a part of everything that we do. Because you know, if they now buy into that vision, then I mean, likely their lifespan is much longer. They may be able to buy into a platform for a longer period of time than, let's say, somebody who's 60 something. I'm not trying to kill off anybody, but that's just the reality. We're all here for a time.
It's okay. Right? I refer to myself now as I'm in the youth of my elderly phase. Mama way out. Right. Gotta bring the young people
in. You know, so it is not out with the old and in with the new, but rather creating space.
Continue.
Right. You know, for young people to come. So you have this, you know. And this goes for everything. You know, we need to have much more platforms where there's a lot less focus on bringing down or focus on the negative things that are trivial, and focus more on a lot of the positive things that we can walk with, the things where people can learn from in those spaces. I often tell people, if you can, get out of here. And I know I might get a lot of trouble for that, but it is not a case where I'm trying to tell people to leave Antigua. No.
Broaden your horizons.
But the world is much bigger than just Antigua and Barbuda. And based on what I've heard most times, and I'm going to be very clear when I say this, and I'll quote or paraphrase, I should say, Dr. Cliff Alexis, the late Dr. Cliff Alexis, who said what he was able to do for Trinidad, well, sorry, he wouldn't have been able to do what he did for Trinidad if he was in Trinidad.
Yes.
Right. So, I mean, if you have an opportunity to leave and to broaden those horizons and to network with people differently, because sometimes you're in a space like this here and maybe you may be doing a type of, let's use music for example, that is not very popular around these parts.
We don't appreciate, we don't understand.
Why not move to a space that may appreciate it? Or you may bring something very different to that space. I mean, we speak a lot about Rihanna, for example. I mean, she went to school in Barbados. Even if she didn't physically donate anything to Barbados financially, just her being a Bajan, just
keeping her accent,
Usain Bolt being Jamaican and being an international athlete, the kind of tourism that brings, the kind of value it brings to a country. I mean, and if everybody in Antigua who we consider to be great and who consider to be, good at what they do, stay here, how do they get recognized internationally?
So may I be permitted $1 million question?
Well, as you asking the questions, now me.
So what are we going to do with Can?
Well,
because to be frank, Can, I think you're outgrown us. I'm going to get in trouble for saying that, but you've broadened. I think you've done everything you can for us here. I'm going to get into trouble for that. I know you sit as director of culture, and I know you have a very broad vision for our culture, but I also am familiar with how our process works, and the frustration that you might go through to execute that broad vision might surface better in other creative spaces. This is me being devil's advocate. So how do you balance both?
Well, for me is because I've bought into the vision that though the world is large, it's expansive, it's also very small at the same time. The internet, social media, your cell phone. I mean, I can do everything I want from my cell phone. I can access my home workstation from my cell phone. So it makes it a little easier. It's not as easy if I was elsewhere, but it makes it a little easier. So what I've been trying to do is to really connect with a network of a lot of the people that I don't.
So bring the world to us, kind of.
Basically,
okay.
Right.
And how's that going?
I mean, again, it's not as easy, but it makes a lot of things easier.
So how do you resist the call to go? Because I'm sure the calls are numerous.
Yeah, we get quite a bit of calls. Still, it is. I can't say that if I don't get a good offer, I would leave. I wouldn't say that because I really would love to do much more for Antigua, much more for the people that exist within the space.
Do we need to find more ways to make you stay?
I'll leave that question for you to answer. I think what is for me, it's what's more important, because I don't know. My wife doesn't know how I do it, but for me, I'm very big on service and helping to create that next generation. I would have donated a lot of time and a lot of my little bit of finance towards supporting other persons. I would have, through Showcase, we would have given this year a brand new steel pan stand.
That was an awesome donation.
Yeah. I can tell you the stand alone is valued at $1,350 for 1,000, and then the bag is 200 and something. I remember how much they sell them for.
So you're basically giving away your profit. But let me rephrase it. You are investing your profit in the next generation.
But that is how it has to be. There are too many negative people around. So when I see people like that, I often pull them aside and we'd have conversations. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're from the same group that I work with, because at the end of the day, I always tell people, if I'm the only person that exists in the steel pan fraternity, then I would not have done anything good. Okay, fine, I will get all of the jobs, but there's only so much jobs I can take anyway. I mean, people call me like, August the 5th is the day of Panorama. I got 3 weddings I got called for on that day. And here's what, I'm going to be best man in a 4th one. So I can't take the other 3. So the reality is there's more work than
quality to
right. And what I have an issue with sometimes is people, saying, boy, this person is not at your level or this. And I don't like to hear it because it makes me feel bad that we can, if I'm not there, we can't find somebody at that level or even greater. So it's to continue I think I was born to be a teacher as well, because I always get happy when my students are doing good. If they want to do better. I have a young guy at Hell's Gate right now. After asking if I have to start copywriting my material, because he go and he play and say, yo, that sound like me, it should not be sound. I mean, it's good. I mean, it shows that he's inspired, because it was the same way I would have been inspired by like Boogsy, and so I used to try and play a lot of what he would have played. Because once you learn and you appreciate that, then you start branching off on your own. And we need to see much more of that. We need to see much more mentorship happening. It just so happens that we live in a space where not everybody is able to pay for a mentor.
Yes.
But sometimes it's not just about the money, because here's what. Some of the same people that I mentor, if I put on a show, they come and pay to come to the show. If I'm selling merchandise, they will come and buy merchandise because they buy into that kind of vision. So that is what we continue to do. In terms of, if what will happen with me and the rest of the world, I really try to just keep my networking going. I'm getting better at the speaking and negotiating and things like that, but it's really trying to, network with people that you meet, that you cross paths with. As I said, I leave for Texas, in a couple of days to do a world premiere there. I mean, we would have networking, through networking, Hesitate goes and features on the largest steel pan festival in the US right now. That's the Virginia Pan Fest, which is huge.
Remember you promised me I can carry a bag.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or you can carry a pan.
Or a pan. No, I meant the pan bags.
Okay.
The case.
And what is interesting about that is one of the only, so you may have heard of Tiny Desk. And Tiny Desk is it's a huge deal, millions and millions of followers. All of the greatest play there and perform there. And the only panelist to perform there is a guy by the name of Jonathan Scales on Tiny Desk. And here's what, he's going to be opening Hell's Gate for Padfest, right? And it's a big deal. But that's to show you how much that role, how significant that role is. I do work in Guyana on a yearly basis. Should be doing some work in St. Vincent this year. So really trying to get around and, to just broaden those horizons. And here's what, every time I jump in a space like that, I try to open a door for somebody else.
Take someone else with you.
So that's what it is.
Where is our creative arts, our creative industries in Antigua? Is it growing? Are we beginning to open up sufficient spaces, our young people? Because in my day, creative arts was not something that you looked at as a first run. You're in your time now, you are doing more of it, but there's still the balancing act of still the day job and everything else around it.
All right.
Do you think we're heading more in that direction?
We are, definitely. We still have quite a bit of way to go, but we are definitely heading there. There are some of my creatives who are saying that an industry doesn't exist. I disagree. And I disagree just because once there is demand and supply, once there's an exchange of goods and services for money, an industry does exist. As to how good in terms of how formal the structure is, that's another conversation. Because there's quite a bit of things that needs to be done on that level. But there are musicians that's all they do. They play in hotels.
True.
They are creatives that they form these small companies and they go out and entertain. I don't necessarily need to be working a day job. If I want to, I can go and create a package and go and sell. Just like a tourist, a taxi driver, he drives his taxi and I can create tour packages, because what we fail to do is to understand the space that we live in and then try to create products to suit. I remember, if you look at this painting behind here, I'll give a plug. This is Ziffer Canvas. Logic, Forming Logic, he did this. I remember painting, somebody was like, it's hard as a painter or an artist to sell paintings. And it is, because we are not yet at the stage where we are paying 5,000 US for an art piece. Right. But I told them, if I'm going to sell food in one of the more poverty-stricken areas in my country, why would I go there and try to sell food at $100 a plate? you know, I mean, you either want to be in business or you don't want to be in business. And in this case, we're actually talking about the business side.
Right.
Yes, so you can be a true creative, and I mean, we have to understand that there's only 100,000 people in Antigua, which means your market is not even 100,000 because not everybody, it might be 10,000, right? It might even be 500. So the thing is, you have to kind of look at the business from that point of view. What are you selling? I mean, if I'm selling art and I want to go in a pub district area or a place that, you know, wouldn't buy things at that value, then I do some cheaper work. Maybe do some $10 stuff, you know, maybe do some $20 stuff because you want to understand. So in terms of, you know, the industry, it does exist and it's probably much more fruitful now. The industry is actually very expansive. When we looked at the study that we did for the mapping of the creative industries, you know, that encompasses things like the entertainment side of it, the fets and things. And right now, you have more than enough choices of fets, which means that musicians, DJs, people like designers, you know, interior, so many options. So it's now for you to understand, here's what. If it is that I want to get a business side, I want to really look at myself as a business, then I can have because I have content that, you know, people here just wouldn't buy. I mean, the 6 movements that I just wrote for, I mean, the average person wouldn't want to pay for work of that magnitude. But then you can also buy a simple arrangement.
Yes.
You know? So you kind of, for me, I've, over the years, and I think Panorama is what taught me that approach. As I look at things, when I get into a space, I look at what is in front of me very different. For Panorama, I am this type of creative, but the competition requires this type of creative. How do I get the two? Because, okay, yes, we want to win. That is the focus. I mean, that's the mandate there. You go into a competition.
No, there's some bands that go into participate.
Yeah.
However, we will move on.
That's another topic. I have an issue with that. But, you know, so my mandate from here is Gate, you know, how do we keep relevant? How do we stay on top of the game? I do have a mandate that sits just above that. It's how do we better ourselves from the year previous? Because we don't judge ourselves, right? So how do we better? So that's my mandate. And just right under that is how do we stay relevant? How do we win the competition? So I now need to now change, because how I used to write in the beginning, I write very differently now. My approach to the competition is very different. So I need to understand, okay, well, this is the demand. So how do I meet that supply creatively? And that is how I've taken that approach into even the business side. I mean, people are no longer, well, little by little, they can't afford the full 10-piece band, or they don't have the spacing for it. But if I can get somebody playing a solo pan with some backing tracks, then that is the market. Then here's what I need to try to find supply for that market. That is the demand. And I'm telling you, it's a real demand. I get calls all the time. Like people call people. I remember a lot of them
get calls. People call me. Yeah, kind of number. No.
So that is so you look at the market, and then if a musician wants to stop it. I mean, for some of the other types of art, it may be a little different. I mean, I'm not sure how fluent the market is where literature is concerned, right? But again, where literature is concerned, your market don't even. If you are into, if you're a writer and you produce books and release books, your market should never ever just be Antigua. Like you can go on Amazon and sell your books. You know, you can go on eBay and sell your book. You can sell your content directly from a publisher. Right? So it is, that market is you know as the person. And I know I'm saying it may sound easy, but I know it's not easy because in the back end,
but you have to do it.
But it's the only way. This is the only way. I mean, again, you took, right now, steel pan is a hot topic. You know, people always want pans, cultural, but it's also very entertaining. So right now I'm working with people to break out onto the soca scene. So I would have done featured on Aloha. As a solo artist. Now, do I really need to do it? No. But when I was trying to get people to go and do it, they just weren't interested, they weren't seeing the vision. So sometimes you kind of have to jump into it, and then, you know. So the idea is, you know, maybe it is. I believe this year, and I'm putting it out there, I don't know when this record is going to come out, that I'm going to be on some truck on Carnival Tuesday, playing pan. with a band, actual mass band. I don't know how, I don't know which one it's gonna be, but I will be on a show. The vocalist gonna take a break, and they're gonna be a pan man with the band or pan man with the DJ on the road Carnival Tuesday, some way, somehow.
That's gonna be interesting. Guess what? Just call me. Let me get a jump up. I will be in the jump up session. I will definitely be. Can, it has been a pleasure. You know, of course, I will continue to follow you. Absolutely, eagerly. I can't wait for next. All right? Thank you very much.